An Iraq War veteran who was severely injured by U.S. police during Occupy Wall Street protests in Oakland says the government is terrorizing people to strip them of their right to protest.
I don't think that they're respecting, first and foremost, they're not respecting our right to assemble and to protest and to redress our government for grievances. They're not allowing us to do that. By the tactics they're using, they are, in effect, they're terrorizing some of us from going out at all. You know, you look at me, this is at least the worst that could happen to you if you go out to one of these. And that's a sad statement for our country.
Well, Scott Olson sustained a skull fracture when he was hit in the head by a tear gas canister. This while police were forcibly evicting Occupy protesters in Oakland in late October. He was released from hospital a month later. News of Olson's injury boosted the Occupy Wall Street movement, which emerged in September. Olson did 2 tours in Iraq, working as a technician. Now, joining us on the line from Columbus, Ohio, is the organizer of Occupy Columbus, Connie Everett. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV. Now, fear tactics have been used by authorities from the very beginning of this movement. How much do you think that has hindered the support for the Occupy protests as a whole?
There is no question that it keeps people from joining in publicly in demonstrations and protests. People are frightened. Early on in the movement, people came, they brought their children, they practiced democracy, and we exerted our constitutional rights. And as the police have become more aggressive, in some cases actually behaving very much like stormtroopers and very, very military fashion of attacking the encampments and the protests, people have certainly become fearful of being caught in that.
Indeed. Now, it is also interesting to note that even some of the courts have not upheld the rights of the protesters for freedom of speech and assembly. Has that affected the credibility of the protest movement at all in the eyes of the Americans that have not yet joined in?
You know, I think that things tend to ebb sometimes, and then they come back, they roll back in. We have our ups and downs, the weather, the police, the courts have all had their effect, and yet we are planning to occupy Congress on January 17th. We're going to be occupying the courts on January 20th. We're going to be occupying the corporations on January 21st, and we will continue the struggle to have our voices heard. The court's behavior, the police behavior is symptomatic of the dysfunctional and corrupt and broken system that we are dealing with right now, where essentially everybody is at the behest of the corporate giants, and they're calling the tune. And the people's voice means very little now. So we're going to continue to try to repeal corporate personhood. We're going to continue to try to achieve justice and practice the democratic process and make the people's voices heard.
And the Occupy movement has made it quite clear that it is an apolitical movement with loyalties neither lying with the Democrats nor the Republicans. But why have presidential hopefuls so far refrained from speaking openly about the movement?
Oh, I think they're dancing around this very lightly. You hear more criticism, of course, out of the Republican Party and the right wing. The Democrats, I think, are hoping still to in some way co-opt our support in the election. But that's not going to happen. What we're about are issues. We don't believe candidates. We know that even if they want to fulfill their promises, once they get into power, they don't act alone, and frequently they're unable to fulfill their commitments to the people, and so we're not on any politician's side. They're in the pockets of the corporations. They are taking big corporate funds, and that's who they work for. They no longer work for the people.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. That was organizer of Occupy Columbus, Connie Everett, joining us on the line from Columbus, Ohio. Many thanks indeed, ma'am, for your insight here on Press TV.